Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for inviting us and being interested in what we have to discuss here. A little background information. I myself am not from Iraq, even if it might look like that. But I work for the German Development Corporation as an external consultant, and we basically started a project in Iraq which was supposed to help develop the Iraqi private sector, which is very weak after the war. There were no private businesses really, so we work in different segments like automotive, IT, and so on. And my colleague Mohammed Al-Samrai and I, we work specifically in IT. So our job was kind of like to do an assessment to see where's Iraq right now regarding IT, where can it go, is there potential, is there interest? And at the end, basically, our conclusion was after 3 months, okay, the sector is still quite weak, it's still quite young, but there's a lot of potential. So what we decided on, together with the German government, to set a program which focuses on facilitating entrepreneurship. That's where I met Ibrahim, for example, with initiatives such as the Startup Weekend, or also an innovation competition which we conducted. So when we actually started this innovation competition, one of the major issues that we saw is people or students were just lacking this mindset of going out there, doing your own business, starting your own projects, and just pushing your ideas forward. So we actually decided on getting a couple of trainers from Germany that would show them a little bit, okay, what, let's say, state-of-the-art methods are there from Silicon Valley or so that you could use to facilitate creativity, to capture your ideas, and basically to turn this into business. And one of the biggest issues there when we trained them was that we talked about Facebook. We obviously talked a lot about Google too, but people couldn't really relate to that. They're like, okay, this is Iraq, man. We really, this is too far away. So we actually thought about it, what could we do to ease this transition? And that's when we sat together, like Ralph Magnus from Berlin, Christoph, Mohammed, myself, and two others, and thought, okay, there's actually a really large demand growing in food delivery, meaning a lot of people are starting, the culture is developing towards ordering a lot of food from outside. But the main issue is right now, the way it works is someone would call, okay, listen, I live around between that hotel, this pharmacy, and that's kind of how it works. And they keep calling you, and it takes you on average like an hour or two to get your food, and it's cold. So that's a real big pain point for the people there. And at the same time, I think Ibrahim already said it, we operate in the north of Iraq, which is also considered the Kurdistan region of Iraq, and it's a little different from the south. Currently, it's a lot more stable. The security situation is a lot more, let's say, stable also and better. So things such as internet penetration up there are a lot higher than they are in the south. So we're talking about 40% in Kurdistan. Kurdistan, Iraq, just some background information, Iraq has about 33 million inhabitants. In the Kurdish area, we have about 5.5. So this brings me more or less to our elevator pitch. Easy Bites is more or less an internet startup which focuses on providing location-based delivery services to the local community. At first, now we're focusing on let's say the Kurdish part of Iraq simply because that's like our test market. It's secure, it's more stable. I myself am allowed to travel everywhere. That just makes things a lot easier. The mid to long-term objective is obviously to scale this business model, take it to Baghdad. I mean, Baghdad has a large potential itself. It has, Mohammed, 7 million inhabitants, and a lot of the problems that we're actually solving here, meaning not finding addresses or not being able to choose your food and so on, have a totally different meaning in Baghdad. Like Baghdad, obviously, you see the news, there are a lot of explosions every day. So people were telling us, hey, you know what, for Baghdad, this has a totally different meaning. This actually means I can stay at home and I don't have to expose myself to the threat of bombs, and I would get the food to my house. So we're talking about a totally, let's say, different value proposition that we're working on there. So regarding we don't really want to engage into an hour presentation and bore all of you. So our idea is to highlight some business aspects of how we operate, what our idea was, what we've gone through. Then go a little bit into the techie part. Ralph will cover that. And after that, just scoop into discussion, if that's okay with all of you. So, business aspects. I don't know, most of you probably know Eric Ries's work, The Lean Startup. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you've not heard of it. It basically, if you want to summarize it, for us, it has a fundamental meaning because the idea is basically just that you say, okay, startups are totally different from established enterprises or companies. because you don't know the market, you don't know if the product's going to work, and so on. So basically, all you have is a conglomerate or a long list of assumptions. And your goal should not be to make money right away. Well, it should be. But you should actually focus on generating a lot of learnings. You want to try to turn all of these assumptions that you have into learnings. Because only then, you know, okay, now I can scale my business model, now I can invest all my millions or billions into marketing, and I would actually have an effect. So the principles that we were guided by, most of all, I would say, is this thing that Eric Ries proposes. It's like a cycle, scientific cycle, meaning you have an idea. Let's say for us, for example, it was a food delivery service. So you would build something that people could actually understand the idea. So for us, that would be, we call it a minimum viable product, meaning it could be a video, it could be a cartoon, where somebody just gets the business idea. What exactly is this about? And after that, you try to measure, okay, and how far is this interesting to people? So what we did, we basically placed this digital MVP in a video on a website and told people, hey, you know what? If you're interested, pre-register for a free beta, and it kind of gave us the feedback, is this actually something the local community wants or not? And after that, obviously, going back to this build, measure, learn, you would then see, okay, this actually makes sense, and then you start building around it, and then you go into the next phase, you actually have a tangible product, and meaning you try everything on a smaller scale, and then you kind of scale it after that. Let's say from a development standpoint of view, or what Ralph will also be emphasizing later, we really tried to focus on small batches. Like, we didn't have this large super master plan which we started implementing, and at the end everything was great. It was actually more like we had an idea and we tried to keep really, let's say, time-wise, really small iterations, started delivering very small components first. I think Ralph will give you some insights. For example, we don't have addresses in Iraq, right? So how do we work around that? So what we did is we did like a tagging competition. We basically said, hey, first winner is going to get like a galaxy or so. So people were all like hyped. And we said, all you got to do is we programmed this little app. You just go to hotels, to restaurants, and so on. It tracks your location via Google Maps, and you just create tags, meaning, for example, hotel or whatever. The benefit for us is we're aggregating a lot of data, which is currently not there. And this data can then be used subsequently in delivery processes to see, okay, the delivery guy doesn't have to call the customer and be an inconvenience. He actually sees straight away, okay, this is where the guy lives. Makes it a lot easier. Yeah, basically, most of the principles you see here are agile guidelines, like deliver and ship early and continuously. One very important aspect, I would say, is also simplicity. Like Iraq or developing countries in general just have really large challenges that we wouldn't find here. Like, for example, physical addresses. For example, also dealing with people that are just like, this is actually a very good example. Most Iraqis that I've met, they know how to use Facebook, and they know how to use Google, but just to find Facebook. So meaning they basically use the Google search engine bar to type in Facebook, and then they click it. If you ask them to use it in any other context, well, it's kind of overwhelming. So talking about apps, all they know is the Facebook app. So in the start, we try to come up with our really intuitive own app, and we realize this is not working out. So at this stage, you'll probably recognize a lot of similarities between our design, user interface design, and Facebook's. Just simply because we got to work with something they know and they feel comfortable with and they want to engage in, right? That's why simplicity, right? Even if a lot of other things that we've been working on, for us, were a lot more intuitive, but there's that. I'm going to skip to a little bit about this product market fit. Now, one of the lean startup, let's say, fundamentals is also that you can use business plans at some point, but it basically tries to capture everything about your business on one sheet. Like, this is what you'll see later. It's very small, so I think I'll have to read out a lot. The fundamental part of this is that the lean startup method or model basically suggests that, okay, you have an idea, and in this idea, this value proposition fits a certain customer segment. Like, for example, maybe the pain points or the pain that some Iraqis have regarding delivery services might not be the same as people have here in Europe. So you're trying to achieve this thing called product market fit. It's always building something, getting the feedback from the users, and adapting. And this is a cycle which is ongoing. And something that we just try to highlight here in a timeline. For example, at the beginning I explained we did this MVP, this digital cartoon that we put online to get some feedback. Another part was the tagging campaign, where we basically saw, okay, are people actually interested in the product itself? And how far are they willing and able to engage with such an app? Another point was what we realized with restaurants especially, that it doesn't make sense just for them to define a delivery radius around their location. Like, if we take a look at the city of Erbil or Baghdad or Sulaymaniyah, there are just places that are a lot easier to access than others. That's, for example, hard infrastructure that kind of, let's say, impedes making things a lot more easy and flexible for you. So what we had to come up with at that point, or at some point, was then, okay, people don't just define a delivery radius around their restaurant, but they can actually define different points around the city which are a lot more, let's say, accessible. Which obviously for them also means that they now can define, okay, when is something economically feasible or profitable for me and when not. Because if you were to just say, I'm going to deliver around the whole city, well, your delivery guy might be gone for 2 days. So, yeah, just guiding around, going through this timeline, obviously other issues that we had, and I talked about this, is that we had an interface at the beginning, UI, which was, for most Europeans, because we tested with Europeans a lot at the beginning, was totally intuitive. But the Iraqis, they kind of like, we measured through Google Analytics and so on, where people would actually bounce off. And we realized, okay, they actually bounced off on the first stage of the order part. So we redesigned everything, aligned it towards Facebook, and that just really blew our mind, because after that we had really a bounce off rate of maybe 10%, and it was about 90 before, so we're kind of like turning the whole story around. What we're working with now, like, this is, I think, very interesting for you to know. We only started in December, and it is March now. We launched the actual app in February, and the tagging campaign in January. So we're very young, we're still learning a lot. And issues such as the absence of physical addresses are still continuously impediments for us to actually improve the service, to make it better, to make it more feasible for the restaurants to deliver and so on. But, for example, our first stage was to work with these reference locations, meaning the hotels, so the delivery guy sees on the map, okay, this and this is where the hotel is, this is where our customer is. In the second stage, most of you probably know TripAdvisor, where you have this compass, and it kind of like shows you the direction, okay, 400 meters, and kind of shows you the direction where you have to go. We're working on an implementation of that as second step. And in a third step, what we're actually doing with the local government, about 15 years back, since then, every house was given a unique code. And this code basically had the first 3 digits, which were more or less the sector. Then there are another, sorry, Mohammed? 2 digits for the street, and the rest is for the house number. The funny part is nobody's really using that. I can't explain why. The only thing I've heard that 10 years ago, people actually got their magazines that way. If you look at the postal service today, well, it's just one building, and you go there once in a while to see if there's a package or something, which is highly inefficient, obviously. So we are still definitely learning a lot in this regard, and I think in that direction with this code, in the future, we'll be able to achieve a lot. I'm just going to briefly explain the business model. Now, obviously, what we do is we go out there and we talk to restaurants. We talk to restaurants, typically those that would have already established a delivery service right now, because that's just the easiest. You don't want to convince them. Might take some time. And one of the biggest issues that they obviously have, because in Iraq, aside from restaurants, you don't really have a lot. There are no nightclubs. Bars, okay, there are some bars, but it's just a food culture, so it's all about food. So a lot of restaurants are obviously reach their capacity limit, meaning they have a certain amount of seats and they're just booked. So they actually see the delivery service as an opportunity of scaling their business, of growing their business without having to make a substantial investment into new physical infrastructure. And that's where we basically come into place, and we convince them that, okay, listen, this is something that you could use, test it for free. So at this stage, we are operating in Erbil and Suli, and we have around 7 restaurants in each city. But we're growing there. For the users, what we're basically offering is a location-based service. Very obvious. They turn on their smartphone. They see which restaurant is in their delivery radius. They browse through the menus, place their orders, and get their food. I think it's very straightforward. What might be interesting for you is more like the revenue model. How exactly are we making money on this? There too, we had to learn a lot. Like in Europe, obviously, commission is something very common. First time I walked into a restaurant and told the guy, hey, listen, let's work this with commission. He's like, are you crazy? You don't ask that here. So he was totally offended. So after that, I was like, okay, what's your proposal? He's like, okay, we can agree on a fixed fee per order. So right now we're charging like $1 per order, and everyone's happy and everyone's. It's just a difference, a cultural difference, basically localizing the business to what exactly is suitable to the region. Okay. Yes, the thing, I can actually show you this. On average, restaurants have around 100, like the large restaurants have 150 to 200 orders a day. So we would say right now we have, in each city, we have about one large restaurant. Then we have about 3 medium-sized restaurants, and the rest is small. Medium is anything between 50 and 100 orders. Small is anything between 0 and, let's say, 50. 0 wouldn't make too much sense, obviously. But if you think about it, it's basically something. It's not going to be anything that in this Kurdistan region you would be making a lot of money per order. It's actually that it's a volume-based business, to be totally honest. And if you aggregate it up, right now we are already. Sorry, I got to calculate. We're maybe at per day you would get. With the restaurants we have, you could probably achieve around 2,000, maybe 3,000 orders. And we are only covering 14 restaurants. That's a question of scaling that, right? There are a lot more restaurants. The question is also taking a look at large cities as, for example, Baghdad. I think the potential is there, but it's a volume-based business. Yeah? You're not going to make a couple of, let's say, $10, $20, $100 on every transaction. Right now we're covering Erbil and Suleimania. We're planning, or we had people approach us from Baghdad especially, from Basra too, and some other cities like Mosul and Kirkuk and such. Yes. So generally we kind of like calculated the total available market, which obviously means this is the whole pie just in Kurdistan right now, which we estimate annually to be about 7.8 million a year. Yeah? The way we calculate, we'll probably try to send around the slides if that's possible through Ibrahim. Biggest issue in Iraq is there's no real data. Meaning, I'll give you an example. Like a week ago, I was trying to find out, okay, what exactly is the internet penetration in Kurdistan? And what you got to know, there's really a monopoly regarding the provision of internet services. So, for example, in Kurdistan, there's one company called Narus Telecom. And the CEO made a really, really contradictory statement. It was something like, okay, so in entire Iraq, we have an internet penetration, I think, of 5%. But that is only due to Kurdistan. And Kurdistan has only an internet penetration of 8%. And we here in Baghdad have 2%. Basically, the numbers don't add up at all. Because I reversed engineered the numbers, and I came up with, well, based on what he was saying, they at least need an internet penetration of 50% in Kurdistan, based on the population, right? So that's what we're working with, right? We know one thing for a fact, and that's very interesting for our business especially, is that the government actually measures its internet penetration right now by the number of Facebook registrations in the country, which is totally, it's funny, at the same time it's kind of creative because they have no other method of doing that, right? Especially because the large corporations, they're not really publicizing a lot of data because of tax reasons and so on. Yeah, I think you get the picture. So the question there is, we still have a really large growing market regarding the internet penetration. What we also have, and this is comparing it to Germany, a real plus for us. Taking a look at the demographics, like nearly 70% of the Iraqi population is between 0 and 34, which is a lot, which is really a lot. Meaning we have a lot of potential actually that is going to be coming up here in the next couple of years. If you combine that with, let's say, the internet penetration, which is also growing like crazy, I think our potential market, target market, is growing in total. So I would like to hand this over to Ralph. We'll give you some technical insights, and how we try to involve some locals too.
Yeah, thank you very much, Oli. Is this on? Can you hear me? Okay. So I think Oliver has said so much, so there's nothing left. Any questions? No. Okay. Just joking. I want just to come back to this slide. We always have to have in mind that we're talking about a delivery time here of about 2 months from the first idea when I met Oli first in Erbil. Then we go to implement the first prototype only for the tagging campaign, and then we extend it in each increment the application. So for us it was a good experience, this project, to test our agile approaches. So we really implemented only the things, only the features that are necessary for each increment of our application. So the change that is always there in software engineering projects comes from serial sources here in our project. The first thing is that we always had running serial instances of our application. We had a demo instance for testing all new features. We have a staging system for our partners to get trained to work with our system. Then we have the live system, and we see on the left we do all the automatic testing and so on, and we get the necessary feedback from our test suites, what we have to adapt to have a functional system, to have all the features implemented in the right way. Then we had big feedback from our observations, so from our local staff in Erbil and Suleimania that are face to face with our partners, the restaurants. They installed the system, they explained the system, how to use it, and this gives us very valuable feedback for us. It was, I think, one of the most important channels here. And the third channel was the social channel, so mainly it's Facebook, where we had all our campaigns and get the user feedback, and all these we had to handle on the level of our application. So we had to react very fast to involve also the people at the place. So if we get feedback, so they saw that the feedback is taken seriously, that we adapt the features, their ideas, their comments. So in general, we was able to adapt and implement features and requests and so on within 1 day to maximum 14 days. Well, 14 days was never, I would say 1 day to 1 week. We were able to implement all changes that happened in these 2.5 months. Just some examples that are not only small changes and small learnings that we have done in this time. For example, in the beginning, or nearly in the beginning, there was a big issue with some kind of operating system in a very special version that brings for us a huge problem. We saw, or one of our test suites and test environments made this visible, that in this version, if you create a full screen home link of this application, that geolocation is not working. It's only triggered once, and if you start the app, and then it's not working anymore. So thank God we figured out this in the beginning before the user started to use our application, because if they want to go around and to tag, and for us these tags are very useful and we want to have them, they have a huge value for us. It would have been disaster if they wouldn't be able to tag, because we have measured that nearly 90% are using iPhone in this time with that version of the operating system. So we were able to handle this in a way that we have some operating system detection that detects a version and that allows to create a home link or not. Second thing that comes from the observation from our partners, Oliver already has mentioned this, was that in the beginning we had the prototype developed like each restaurant can define a specific radius for the delivery, but we very fast saw that this is not sufficient for our partners, so they need the possibility to create several independent service zones with different charging and so on. So this was a very important observation from our partners that we also can or could implement very fast. And the observation that comes from social channels as well as from Google Analytics, where we observed the flow of the visitors, was that we simply had to simplify the ordering and the delivery process as much as possible so that it's really straightforward, just 3 clicks to get your food and not options here and add pepperoni here and so on, just a basic menu and left out everything. So we had implemented everything, we would be able to do all this, but we had to leave it out maybe later, next year or whenever the users can adapt this. So all what I have said is also reflected in the way we deployed our application. We had several branches and instances running. On the left we have the development branch where Christoph and me are putting all our new ideas, and whatever seems to make sense goes into a demo server where the local staff can test it and can give us feedback. And in the same time we had the localization branch where we had the local staff, the local EasyByte staff that is directly involved in translating everything in time so that each new feature before it comes to the live system is completely localized. We included this localization directly in the application so it could be done in-app. And till the version 0.2 we had a staging server where we trained all the restaurants before they're going live, that we can ensure that they are able to handle the system, that they know what to do if there's a delivery request and so on. From the current version there's a training modus integrated in the live server where we can switch a restaurant from training modus to live modus, so no need anymore to migrate restaurants from staging to live, just switching it. Here you can see wherever this is a triangle, there was automatic test execution of our test suite. So whenever we committed a feature, it has to pass the test suite. So beside that we have this very short period of time, we always took care about quality and tried to follow test-driven development here. Yeah, that's for the deployment. Christoph will give some additional information regarding the quality assurance and the architecture that we have chosen to implement the system.
Thank you very much. Hello everybody, I'm Christoph Herbst and I'm also glad to talk to you here in the Google main headquarters. Can you hear me like this, or do I need this one? No. Yeah, probably. Okay, hello everybody. So, I will do it very quick. So, Oliver already told you that we try to develop the application very fast, and we have quickly changing requirements, and that's why we need testing. You see a small screenshot of our testing coverage, and from the beginning on we try to have a good coverage, of course, but due to the time constraints and to the very limited manpower we have, we are not yet at 100% in each controller, but we are trying to achieve it. Okay, so that's a screenshot from PHP unit. So that's it. Then yeah, we have a mobile application, and I just want to say a few words about the special aspects we have to cover there. This is a simplified overview of our application architecture. What you see is that we use a Symfony backend on the server, which delivers mainly HTML files, full covered HTML. But we also use we can also deliver JSON data in certain circumstances where it's very important that we have small data, that we can have a good performance. Then we use a lot of JavaScript libraries, so standard libraries that you might already know, JavaScript, and to have a unique or a consistent look and feel, mobile look and feel on every platform, we use jQuery Mobile. And of course we use Google Maps a lot and a few others. So then we wrote a lot of JavaScript, custom JavaScript code on our own, and to have the glue of everything, so everything fits together, we use Require as a modularization platform. So this is a lot of content, and we try to keep the size of data that needs to be transferred very small. So we use separation of the content to static and dynamic content, and use cookie-less domain for the static content, and we try to compress everything and deliver it to the browsers that support compression of content. And next is some screenshots. Maybe you already waited for it. On the right side, you see all the text that Oliver talked about, the text that we're collected by our users. That's Sulemania City, and we try to use these texts wherever possible. And on the left side or in the middle screenshot, you can see one example of this, where we use it in the screen where the restaurant administrator can create service zones for the restaurant. Oliver was talking about it. And this is mainly for orientation, but also for creating these service zones to, you know where you are on the map. And we use these texts in a lot of other places when you order food and when for the deliverer and so on. And on the leftmost screenshot, you see one of our restaurant partners. That's the Uber restaurant and the menu. And what you can see here is also that mainly is using jQuery Mobile here to because we have a lot of information to show on small screens. So we use there, for example, collapsibles. What you see, so you can click on the food category, and then it opens up all the food there, and then you click on it, and there you can add different food items, and everything is in one screen. You don't have to switch around pages, something, so everything is on one screen, and it fits very good into a smartphone. So that's another thing. Maybe you want to talk about again. Thank you very much.
So I've already mentioned the task of localization and of providing the whole application also in Arabic language. So in the beginning we started, or if you wanted to do the tagging campaign, we really had only 2.5 weeks to start to implement the application to make the users able to go around the city and tag important places. So it was a short time. So there, for the localization, we simply had the text file that we sent to our colleagues in Kurdistan, and then we get it back. So, but obviously this is not manageable for an application that grows and grows and has to meet a lot of changes. So we decided to have a localization backend, and this screenshot is just depicting this fact. So we see the application in English and in Arabic, and you can also use the application on the desktop. For example, here for do the localization. So the process of localization is totally embedded in the application. You can log in as translator, and during the deployment, all the localization or translatable strings are extracted and provided in this interface that automatically saves as you type all the necessary translations. So this is just one example how we integrate the workflow with the local stuff and us in Berlin. So and from this translation, all translations are pulled from Git repositories to all different branches, so that we have a consistent environment, at least regarding the translation and the localization. Just to give a little outlook, what will happen within the next weeks and months, and let's have a look how it works. So Oliver already mentioned that we want to implement something like a compass. Why we want to do this? Because the easy tags are very good to overcome in the beginning the situation with lack of physical addresses, but they are not so accurate. So for the first, it's good to come near to the user or to the customer who has ordered our food. But so the last meters, so the last 100 meters, and are important to find the customer. And here we want to implement such a compass, where the delivery boy can see which direction he has to go to find the customer. And it should be very easy, without maps, without street names, just to during driving, he should be able to look there, yeah, and not to read there and drive in this direction against the wall. Yeah, he should be able to have a quick look where to go. And there we also want to reuse the text that we have collected, so that not only the user is displayed, or not only the customer is displayed, but also texts that are nearby that can help the delivery boy to get an orientation of where he is, where he has to go. Yeah? So right off Canyon Hotel, for example. Yeah. Then one other thing is, of course, we want to allow the restaurants to customize the menus, to give it a unique look and feel, and maybe later to run independent instances of Easy Bytes. But one of our main focuses is really to extend the work with the tags, to extend, to overcome the absence of physical addresses, to find different approaches to provide good orientation. And we have many ideas, and we're currently working on this. We're doing research on this in cooperation with the government and so on. So there will come a lot of new changes in the next weeks for us, and but we are looking forward for the changes because we are prepared with our architecture and with the application design. So this is, I think, the most important things that we will do in the next weeks, months. We have collected some facts where we can talk about. It sums up everything a little bit, which technologies we have used, what we have integrated, which services we are using, and so on. I think that's all that we want to say in the short introduction. I think everything else we can do in the discussion part.
Yeah, it wasn't that short. Sorry about that. Yeah, obviously we couldn't give you guys the whole picture. Like, there's a lot missing. Like, we have a feedback system where you rate your order, but it's all very basic. But anyone have any questions? Oh, can we hand this around, or how do you want to do it?
You could repeat the question.
Oh, okay.
Have you got a sense of what kind of devices people normally use, like what kind of phones, and is there any part of the application which is also on the desktop, or everything is not?
Okay. So the question was whether we have a sense of what devices, mobile devices, are currently being used, and if also the application is accessed via desktop computers. I remember right at the beginning, I told you something about this MVP where we placed it on the website, this cartoon. When people signed up, we asked them they could choose like 4 different categories. Are you using Android? Are you using iOS? Are you using Windows Mobile? And so on. So there we aggregated a lot of data. And back then, our question was, are we going native or are we not going native? And I know Ralph had said something about the iPhone being very, let's say, present. But that was the first impression. After we had that running for 2 or 3 weeks, we saw there was a balance between Android and iPhone. And once in a while, you had Windows Mobile and BlackBerry slip in there. So I'd say right now we have about 40% iPhone, 40% Android, and 10 Windows and BlackBerry. Regarding desktop, it's actually funny that you're asking because we have measured over the last 2 weeks that basically when the system cannot position you, we had a fallback, meaning because where is it supposed to deliver the things to? And we realized that a lot of people weren't using this fallback, meaning a lot of people were getting this message that they couldn't be located. So we tracked this back, and people were using it through their desktop, which was also part of it. But the issue was that with the desktop computers, we kind of used wireless LAN to position them. And the problem with Google Chrome, but also with other browsers, obviously, that you get a little pop-up to allow it, and people don't really read it. So they're just stuck there, and so they close their browser at some time and just order via phone. So that's something that we need to work on, too. Yeah? But that's definitely, those 2 channels are.
So, and the restaurant only uses the app?
The restaurant has its own view. I think you saw parts of it. It basically, most of them use a point of sales. And in Iraq, I think 95% run on Windows. So, but it doesn't really matter for us. We open up a little browser window next to it. And I don't know if Ralph can simulate it. They basically, whenever an order comes in, they get this really, really annoying sound, which keeps going until you read the order. So that's how it works on their end.
My question is basically, how do they customize now their menu on the app?
Okay.
Is it connected to the point of sale?
No, it's not integrated to the point of sale because it's just so heterogeneous. People are using own systems and so on. That's not feasible for us. So they basically have a manager interface and they have an approver interface. The approver is basically the cashier that sees the orders and so on. The manager has the option of editing the menu and so on. And that's all on the app. On the app. No, they basically open it up on a desktop computer. And yeah, I think Ralph can just show you while I'm talking.
Just keep talking.
Yeah, I'll just keep talking. So yeah, they open it up on their computer, have a little screen, and they have the same view as here, just that they have a lot more options of editing the menu, deleting orders, setting delivery radiuses, and so on.
So if the restaurant owner doesn't have a PC, is split?
You could say it like that, yes. But the issue is the way they operate right now is someone approves the order, and then they print out a sheet of paper. On that sheet of paper, we have a zoomed-in view of the location where it's going to and a zoomed-out view. So you see the tags that are exactly next to the location, and some that in a different perspective. Because some restaurants, let's say maybe 80% of them are okay, I'm not going to give my delivery guy a phone. No way. He's going to be gone. So they're okay, what can you offer us? And we're okay, we can work with this sheet of paper. And that's basically what we develop with them together. So they have a printer, they print out the thing, the customer signs it at the bottom, and that's it.
So this hasn't been an issue that people were complaining, the business owners were complaining that I don't have a PC, so I cannot customize my menu.
Well, if you think about the restaurants. Yeah. Oh, sorry about that. So the question was, is it an issue that a lot of restaurant owners don't have any computers? Right now, the restaurants we're targeting, really all of them have a point of sales. Okay. The only issue is maybe the internet. But there's a thing called HiMax, which is basically something like 3G here for us, yeah. And they buy this little adapter, pay $10 a month, and that's it. And it doesn't take a lot of convincing on that side. And strategically for us, and this is a very important point, for us, this whole thing has a large network effect, 2 groups, the users and the restaurants. Like there are 2 or 3 restaurants, if you have them on board, like a lot of people join and a lot of restaurants join. And the restaurants join if a lot of people join. And you know, it's kind of like a cycle. And I think like about 2 weeks ago, we really broke that cycle because there's a restaurant called B2B, which is in Erbil, really everyone orders there. They have like 200 or 300 deliveries a day. Meaning you tell another restaurant, hey, B2B is on it. Oh, really? Okay, I'm in it too. So that's basically how it works. And I think we got to that point now.
And in addition to this, especially in the beginning, we also assisted the restaurants with importing their menus, and we give lots of assistance. Yeah.
Well, the issue is also that, and that was training our sales team, like the people that go out. We had limited resources. So you're going to probably laugh if I tell you that what we did is we got some students that really liked the idea and told them, hey, listen, go around and start asking restaurants, hey, why are you not using this? And basically go to the restaurants, and if you seal the contract, we'll give you 50% of all revenue for the next 6 months, which is achieved through that. And that's kind of working wonders because we have really limited capacity regarding our resources. It's working around it. And one of the main things training them, is maybe also a cultural aspect, is that we don't even show the people the manager interface. We go there first, and even while they're using it, we just show them the approver interface. Putting in the menu the first time, we do it. Because they're just going to be so overwhelmed by the complexity. They're like, no, I don't know. So right now it's like 3 buttons. We tell them, hey, listen, it's exactly 3 clicks and you got your order. And they're all totally happy. Then they come after to us. That's actually what has been happening. They come to us and ask, hey, is there something to edit the menu and blah. We're like, yeah, there's this, and this. Oh, really? And there's reporting too. Great. So that's basically, it comes from their side and at their pace. And that makes it a lot easier for us to go along.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's what I wanted to say with the previous sentence. Yeah.
First, I assume you're doing cash on delivery. There isn't
Yeah.
payment, right?
Nope.
And the second thing, do you, from your experience, I know it's still early, but do you think users now are ready to trust ordering something online, even if it's as small as just
Okay, so I'm going to...
Given everything, given all the situation,
Well, first thing, cash on delivery. The question was, do we have cash on? Are we doing cash on delivery? Yeah, there are no mobile payments for whatever reason. I mean, a lot of conspiracy theories there. But let's not go into that. The second question was whether there's a trust issue within the local community. I think I was there since July, and monitoring what's been happening in Erbil and Suli. Especially regarding the engagement of technology in day-to-day life, they're really opening up towards that. And like I said, a lot of people are already using the phone to order a food, and that the amount of those people is actually increasing. And if we take a look at our primary customer segments, at the beginning it was really focused on students, who obviously like to engage with new technologies. But at this stage now, it's a lot of private sector employees, like companies like big telco providers like Korek or so, where they're just sitting in their cubicles and they order their lunch. And for them, it's just amazing. It's their highlight of the day, just using the app to order something, Because yeah, they're already using it via phone, and they're really annoyed by that process. So within our marketing campaign, and that was really, I think that's the feedback we got. It was a really important factor. Is we put at the beginning made on Germany everywhere, and they're like, okay, yeah, Germany sounds good. We trust Germany, right? So that kind of made a big difference too. Yeah. So it's quite a question of how you position yourself in the market. I think it's very sensitive to this. Yes.
I was just going to ask, how do you handle the kind of quality expectations? Because obviously, if I order using your app and the delivery guy doesn't deliver, I'm going to say, oh, this is crap.
How do we handle the quality expectations? Now, like I said, we couldn't show you the whole picture. What basically happens after you're done ordering, and I don't know if Ralph is actually working. Okay, and the delivery guy went back to his restaurant and said, okay, the order was delivered. You would get like a pop-up screen next time you log in, and you have to rate the delivery service regarding time, regarding food quality, and service quality. This feedback always goes back to, let's say, to us first, but also to the restaurants on a regular basis for numerous reasons. We believe that, and that's a point we have definitely considered, that bad service regarding the restaurant will reflect negative upon us. So we have a responsibility of engaging there. I'll just give you one example of how we would engage. Like a lot of restaurants at the beginning were like, you know what, I'm going to take entire Erbil as delivery radius. And I'm like, for me with my car in, let's say, not rush hour, it would still take me over an hour to get there, and food will be cold and so on. So what we try to do is we actually issue recommendations then. If we see that the delivery time is, let's say, really a lot more than average, we would go there and tell them, hey, listen, the way you define your service zones is just not working out. And I think we have the leverage there, to be honest. Yes, of course.
So, keeping in mind, don't mess with Iraqis when they are hungry.
Yeah.
How do you do you have anything that's like the human thing in the middle? Because you guys have automated everything, and even similar systems in Egypt or even in the UK, they still have like a phone number or something if things go wrong. Are you people who deal with this, or do you keep it like to the restaurant if something goes wrong in like 2 hours and then
It's a mix. Like two interactive components that we have. The first thing is on every order you place as a customer, you can put in notes, which are retrieved by the restaurant. Okay? And the restaurant obviously can reject your order, approve your order, but it always has the option of, let's say, responding. It's kind of like integrated chat, if you want. Okay? That's one interact component where you have some human components, if you want so. The second part is we do display the restaurant telephone number. Yeah. The third point is also that what we try to monitor very closely is how many orders have failed, what were the reasons why they failed. We also try to monitor very closely this dialogue between the people, like if an order was rejected, why was it rejected? But these are obviously issues that really become very, let's say, critical when we scale, when we grow. And yes, we haven't reached that point yet, and I hope we do reach it at some point, because that would be good.
One addition to this is that we also track if the restaurants are using the application when they are intended to use it. So they can set up constraints of opening hours, and we can monitor if they're really having opened this site on the left where you see the incoming orders. Yeah? If they are offline when they should be open, Oliver and Christoph and Mohammed will get an email, and Mohammed has to call them and say, "Look, switch on your computer, you guys should work."
It actually, you're laughing, it actually happens. And they're like, how do you know? Well, you hacked into my computer or something. No. So yeah, we are putting, and it's an evolving process. Like we didn't have all of this from the start. It actually happened. I ordered one day and then nothing happened, and he's like, okay, let's implement this. Yes.
Two questions. One from a person dialing in and one from myself. The question from me is coming back to the business model. What's the difference between a commission and a $1 charge per order in practical terms and in cultural terms?
Cultural terms, I guess I don't want to offend anyone, so I gotta be careful how I say it. Okay, if we take a look at, let's say, the average order volume, okay? Like the minimum order value of most, let's say, restaurants is about $10 to $12, okay? And for them, it's obviously, I think it's an economic motive. They basically see, okay, no matter what we do, we're providing the same service. So why would we be getting more money if someone's ordering more? That's their perspective. I think it's cultural. At the same time, it's also practical, because if you take a look at it culturally, usually it's families. Families, the normal household size would be about 5 to 6 people, right? So it wouldn't just be one person ordering. It would be a person ordering for 5 people. So we're talking of orders of $50 or $60. So for them, they're basically saying, okay, so you're not doing a lot more when one person is ordering or 5 people are ordering. So I just want to stick with this fixed fee of the minimum amount, which is, let's say, on average $1. Exactly.
My question is about the geotagging of the competition. If you could share more details on how many people are involved and how many tags you managed to get. But also, secondly, are you planning to open source the data because you could see those useful for other businesses in the region?
Yeah, you want to run another competition with us? That's cool. You can sponsor like Nexus Ones or something. No. So what was the design of the competition? Well, obviously what we did is people didn't even know what tagging was. So we invested a lot of time in educating people in that regard. Facebook is a very popular channel. It's probably one of the only channels that you can use to target the audience that we were trying to target. So what we did during the setup, we said we're going to focus on Suleimania and Erbil because there's no use in just tagging and not validating the data. So we had a couple of students who were kind of like freelancers who were looking into the tags, saying, does this make sense? Is this realistic? And they would then approve the tags, okay? Because that was also an adjustment that we had. The first couple of tags, we had like the first day, one person who did like, I think 150 tags. So we're like, oh, this is going like crazy. And then we realized she was tagging everything from her house. So and so we were kind of like really adjusting that, and he basically fixed that you can tag things in a certain radius and so on. So it's an evolving, let's say, process. In total, we ran the campaign, I think, about 5 weeks in total. We have accumulated in Suli about 350 tags, I think, and in Erbil a little less, about 200. And they're a little wide scattered, so we're kind of lucky there. Well, up until now, like if you guys have use for it, sure, I'm saying that. But we invested some money into it, so I think we're open-minded. But right now, it is private. But again, if there's use, definitely we're open for discussions. We're not hard.
So you mentioned about the internet penetration. Like what's the percentage of internet penetration? But what about smartphone penetration?
We have data on mobile phone penetration. I'll give you that first, and it's going to stun you because it's 90% in whole Iraq. But then you have to look at, and this is more like a qualitative assessment that I can give you going around and telling you what I've seen, is that especially in the target segment that we're focusing on, let's say 18 to 35-year-olds, all the people are using smartphones, yeah? Especially in the Kurdish region. And we also have people, let's say, that come from Baghdad, that see Baghdad, and I hardly, like anyone that has like a cheap old Nokia phone in that age group always has his iPhone along. And this culture is basically all about logging into Facebook at every location that you go to. It's cool, but it's different from here, right? So what we can say on that end right now is we have no hard data on that, but we basically, it's more based on our qualitative assumptions that along with the internet penetration, a lot of it is mobile. And I think a next step for us to narrow that down would also be to see in how far the internet penetration, which is already measured through Facebook, is to see in how far is it also being used mobile.
Then the other question I have is how do you maintain the 99.9% uptime?
I'll give that to my...
So how do you maintain your 99.9% uptime?
How we maintain this? Right now we sit there and pray all the day. No, we have running some monitoring services, of course, that are notifying us when something happens. So we have several instances running of this service, but only one is now for the live system. Others is now reserved for testing and for localization. For now, we have no redundancy, but this will change if there will be some money, and we have the ability to invest a little bit more in the infrastructure. But for now, it's working well, and we can react very fast because, of course, we monitoring from external services, and so we have the chance to maybe react within some minutes. Yeah? So I think it's.
Are you planning to rise when you mention more money, or do you bootstrap?
Hey. Well, up until now, we had a couple of local companies too that showed interest in sponsoring this and so on. We're still bootstrapping because, like I said, for us, KRG is our pilot market. Our goal is actually to expand to Baghdad and so on. But if there are any options of, let's say, acquiring funds in another way, we probably would do it. But we haven't gotten to the stage where we're actively seeking seed funding or anything to let's say, to push this or boost the business. It's also, we still feel that we're really learning a lot. Like, regarding the changes, just taking a look at the last months, we're not at the, I mean, you reach the point where your learnings, obviously at the beginning your learning curve is very steep. At some point it kind of flattens, and we have not completely reached that point yet. When we do, and we get, let's say, our internal responsibilities and all settled, I think that's the stage when we would start seeking external funding.
I was curious if you guys have like an SMS we're interested in, just for the
Totally. We are using currently one of the biggest issues from the restaurant's point of view was okay, so there's this internet and people are ordering, and couldn't people just fake order and stuff? So what we did is when you register, you have to give your phone number and you get a code. Now you're gonna laugh, but we actually took this from Eric Lee's lean startup idea. We did it really manually. I mean, we have someone sitting there sending out text messages, this is your activation code. So at some point, yes, that's definitely something we have to look into, or want to look into.
You mean ordering? Yes.
Yeah, that was my thinking. It's just
Okay.
it provides another way to
I think that when we start integrating like SMS gateways and so on, that would be something that one could approach then too, obviously.
We have to run off our last question.
Yeah.
How did you bootstrap your website, your structure that you put online, and how did you get the first people to see it?
Okay, like I said, we had a, let's say, a platform. We were conducting these startup trainings, and a lot of things, let's say, in that community are word of mouth is really, 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 really big, right? So what we did is in one of the trainings, we did like a test, user acceptance test. We basically showed a video. We have it here too, but which basically explained the idea of Easy Bytes, kind of like that Dropbox video, you might have seen it. And we told people, hey, okay, you know what, we're going to post it on our Facebook page. If you like it, sign up and share it. And that's how the whole thing got started, actually. And the next stage then was to build this website where we put this MVP on. And I think up until today, like for some Facebook and flyer campaigns, we spent maybe like $1,500. That was more like from our own pockets, like here and there.
Okay. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe just I can just show this small use case. I don't know. I can't remember why I wanted to show, but maybe it's interesting. Here on the left side, I'm logged in as an approver. This is also a role that has come up from our observations that not everything has to be done by a manager with all privileges. We have just one guy sitting there that approves deliveries and
Cashier, basically.
cashier, exactly. So he has very limited possibilities, and this button is also one observation. We have to have the ability to switch off delivery immediately. Yeah, if maybe the delivery guy leaves for lunch or something unplanned happens, so this overrides the schedule of opening hours. So what happens if I've put my position now to Erbil in a location where we have delivery. I choose my category of desire and I choose to order from this restaurant. What I get here is a menu where my son loves pizza, so I order some pizza. Let's try it with chicken he likes. I take also one. So, and he can give some information, yeah?
You can comment on this, like, because the complexity of the whole process gets more complicated if we have a shopping cart. So we kept it in this very easy, straightforward design where you see at the bottom here, you can just, you just have a listing of what you have and you can cancel it out. The cost is obviously, it's not as flexible, but it keeps it in a very, very streamlined, straight process.
So now, if the customer orders, it comes up this nice sound, and you see the overview here of orders. To cancel this, you have to go to the order, and you get overview, including the customer notes and telephone number to call the customer, maybe to call something is out, or do you want to change something, or you can edit then if something should be changed on request of the user. So then we had after 1 month of implementing, we had a list of seven states that the delivery can have. It was very detailed and very cool. You can follow each step, and this totally failed because nobody was able to handle this. Now we come up with 2 states in progress or rejected. So 30 minutes. So the customer also has here some information. So submit it, and the customer here should automatically get an updated information that it's in progress. So here we use our JSON interface to pull the status of the delivery. The cashier gets something to print for the delivery guy, a route and a screenshot or position of very close the screen of the position of the customer, where you see, okay, he's close to this tag. That is one of the tags that has been submitted by our customers and users, and then you can set it to delivered. And the user now is blocked for a new order until he has rated the order. So in this way we get a feedback that delivery has taken place and that we have to get our dollar from the delivery. So he has to give this. Our observation is that this actually is done when the user wants to order new food 3 days later. Yeah? So it's never done immediately, only we have to wait 3 days, and then it's completed, the order. And then it can continue.
This process was basically the way we changed it. He said we had like a 7-step process, and it was really complex. And just speaking to the restaurant owners, they're like, I don't get it, and my cashier definitely won't get it. So what can you do to reduce this? And then we came up with, okay, you know what? It's just in progress, rejected. And then after that, you print it out, and it's delivered or delivered failed. And that has really served us a lot because it has really reduced the complexity of the whole application. Because you can explain it to anyone in like 5 seconds, and they get the idea. So.
Maybe just to close this, because there was a question, I'm just now take the role of the manager of this restaurant that I've ordered right now, and here the manager has a possibility to maintain the whole menu. He can arrange the menu, the categories, the options, so the different sizes he can define for pizza and for drinks, and so everything can be done directly in the application. Yeah, I think that's all in this short time that we can present.
Thank you again for this.
Welcome.